Your thoughts on the P. Diddy thing? Just touching on that since Charlie brought it up.
Oh yeah. Before I give my 2 cents on that, I just want to acknowledge everyone. I see that the chat in the chat people are waving at me saying hi Ishmael. So I just wanted to say hi back to everyone else. Thank you guys so much for being here. Um, along with the Epstein files is something that is going to crack the iceberg when all of this information hits the general public. And a lot of people I know have been asking, well, we've been hearing this for years, but you guys have to understand that you know, a lot of this has a lot to do with what CERN did. A war that's been taking place between time traveling, between the good forces, the forces of light and forces of darkness. So things are constantly fluctuating. But to answer your question, I believe that a lot of prominent figures, a lot of politicians, a lot of Hollywood elitists are going to go down when this list is revealed to the general public. And let me tell you guys, it is going to be revealed. All right. There is this thing called Project Looking Glass, right, where they're able to see into the future. And because of that, there will come a time, and I believe this is the year, because a lot of roads point to 2025 as the year of disclosure, where something's going to have to be released. And I believe that it's all going to start with the Epstein files and then, of course, the Diddy files. And another thing I wanted to point out is the reason um, Donald Trump was in some of these pictures with Diddy and in some of these pictures with Epstein, it was because he was a mole. From day one, he was working with the White Hats. And so there is this saying that states, you keep your enemies closer. So from the beginning, the only reason there are a few pictures of Trump and Jeffrey Epstein circulating online is because from day one, Trump was hired by the alliance to infiltrate what was going on in those islands. So yes, some people have been asking me, then why is Trump's name on the list? It's not on the list or on the flight. I'm sorry. Well, because he was a mole from the beginning. He was assigned, to infiltrate Jeffrey Epstein as well as P Diddy, and that's the only reason why Trump and P Diddy were friends back in the day. It wasn't because Trump was part of that. It was because he was assigned by the alliance ahead of time, even before they asked him to run for president, to be a mole.
Do you know what? I think you're absolutely right there, Ishmael, because let's not forget, Trump's first term was about finding out who the rats are, who the corrupt ones are, what is going on, how the system works. And for the last 4 years up until now, he's been prepping. And don't forget, he has been commander in chief the whole time. Charlie has
Absolutely.
told us all along he's been in control. He knows exactly what's going on and where. And I'm of the opinion now that Trump has met, and the way Trump works is he will put everybody out there. If there's a picture, oh my God, look, Trump's standing with Diddy. Look at Diddy. That's what Trump's been trying to tell us. Those pictures are, look, I'm standing with the bad guys. I'm putting them in the limelight. Here they are. I'm going to make
Mhm.
sure they pay. And guess what? They are paying now. And do you know what? Every so often I sit back and I go, I didn't see Trump pulling that move off. And here he is. The Diddy case this week, it's really going to ramp up. And as Charlie said, when you're trying to take down a cabal, a pyramid of evil, you're not going to lay everything out at the bottom tier. You're going to keep accumulating evidence until you climb your way further and further up that pyramid. It's only once you take out the top of that pyramid that then you release everything. I'm sorry, why tip your hand until you know the job is done?
And speaking about taking the cabal from the upper pyramid, um, as the real Pope was actually taken out years ago. And what we've been seeing in the last few years are just actors. And so the metaphor behind the Pope dying in the last few days, which, by the way, to the Alliance, he was known as Caput Draconis, which means the head of the dragon. And for those that have been following my work, as you know, the Vatican has been at the core of the Luciferian cabal for, about 1700 years. So, what happened in the last week and a half? When Trump went to his funeral, he didn't go to his funeral just to pay homage and just to pay, you know, to give him the respect. He went there to let everybody know that the head of the dragon is out and that now the gold is in his hands, in the hands of the alliance, you know, and that's what he did. You know, he had a meeting with Macron from France. And by the way, Zelensky tried to interrupt that meeting and Trump told him to get the heck out, that he is not allowed to be in that meeting. And
Sorry,
he told,
Ishmael, it's the other way around. He had the meeting with Zelensky and Macron tried to get in.
thank you for the correction. But
No
the whole
worries
point,
at all.
he went over to the funeral to just let everybody know that the gold is now in the hands of the alliance and that the head of the snake is taken out, symbolically speaking, you know. So, you know, we have a lot to look forward to. And this is the year. You know, I've been telling people for a long time now that 2025 is going to be a pivotal moment, that it's going to change everything on planet Earth.
Ishmael, I think you're absolutely right on that fact. I mean, you've got to look at the optics here. JD Vance went over and 4 or 5 hours after his meeting with the Pope, which is probably to tell him your job's done now, it's time for you to go. He's
Yeah,
gone. And all of a sudden, it's created a situation where Trump can go over there, probably in safety because no one will attack a funeral, and
hmm,
sit down with the rest of the actors that are out there, the ones
exactly.
that are playing their bit parts, and knowing full well that it's not going to be bugged, it's not going to be the cabal trying to do some underhanded thing. He can sit down and have a quiet chat with the people he needs to. And as you rightly said, you know, the gold's in their hands now. No more so than the UK. We've seen so many planes leave the UK full of gold. This is it now. Trump is preparing for the next phase of this operation. You can see it.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that they used to take out the head of the dragon, again, you know, to the alliance, he was known as Caput Draconis, which means the head of the dragon, was they used an advanced extraterrestrial technology that was actually employed by the Galactic Alliance because they were overseeing the entire project, that extrapolated whatever was in that body, which, according to my intel, was the spirit of a Draco reptilian that was animating the actor's body, projecting his consciousness from the star system of Regel, which is where the reptilians hail from in our universe. So again, for those that don't understand this, this is an interdimensional warfare. You know, this is taking place on many different levels of reality. So they use this device that was given to the Whiteheads by the name of the God frequency. And what that device does is actually extrapolates the dark entity that is animating the actor's body spontaneously, instantaneously. And that's what happened. And that's the reason why hours, or yeah, I think it was hours before that happened, J.D. Vance, like you mentioned, came to tell him that his time is up. And then that's what they did. So the entire operation was taking place on all these different levels, and it was overseen by the Galactic Alliance.
Yeah. Do you know what, Ishmael? This is why we have people like yourself on to help us understand the next part of what is going on, because I'm still struggling to understand the Galactic Alliance and the 5D, the 6D, and everything else moving onwards. So it's wonderful to have your insight into this, because me personally, I'm still really new to this journey. And, you know, I'm still operating in the 3D. You know, what is Trump going to do next without thinking about, well, actually, what's going on behind the scenes? What's going on that we can't comprehend yet? And I'm just going to jump in here and ask you a question, because otherwise I'll leave all the questions till the very end and then it'll be just a mad rush. This is from Pam Duckworth. Can Ishmael tell us exactly who are the actors, masked, clones, etc., please?
That's a very good question. When they took out the originals since 2018, that procedure has been happening, or that operation rather. To some people's surprise, a lot of these actors are actually inorganics. They are being possessed by dark entities animating human bodies. So they're not even clones. They're literal duplicates that were actually made in these underground bases called deep underground dumps. I'm sure you've heard of them. And they were designed by a negative AI, an invasive negative AI, that has been, believe it or not, at the highest level in control of the dark forces for a very long time. I mean, this war with AI goes back to billions of years, and I've talked about that. So that's how these actors were put into place. They were generated by this AI, this negative AI that's actually been around for a long time. And this is not the AI that we are building. The AI that we are building is rather primitive in comparison to this alien AI that has been invading worlds for a long time. So that's how these actors were made. So
Yeah.
it's a form of a simulation, you could say.
Yeah, because there is a lot of talk that we are in a simulation. And when I started learning about simulations, and obviously I've watched The Matrix, and I sat there and I'm like, do you know what? There are some days that go really fast, and there are other days that go really slow. And I'm sitting here thinking, maybe that's like a computer that's doing too much and it's slowing down. And
Mm-hmm.
that made me sit there and go, ooh, maybe we are in a simulation. And it made me ponder for some serious thought.
Well, every ancient text talked about that, not regarding the Bible in itself, but other metaphysical, you could say, secret knowledge. They've always, like the Gnostics have always mentioned that we are living in an illusionary reality, that the original reality, which is what we would consider the Garden of Eden, was operating in a higher dimension, which is what we now call the fifth dimension, as to why we are now returning to the fifth dimensional Earth, right? Be returning back to Eden, the Golden Age. So this current reality was actually installed or initiated by an Anunnaki by the name of Enki, who was working with an intergalactic computer network when he took control of the affairs of the Earth. So, and the kicker here is that the reality that we are now in, which is again a false matrix, was scheduled to dissolve by no later than 2028. So that means that between now and 2028, humanity has to make a choice. Are they going to be returning back to Eden, which is the organic original Earth timeline, or so that means that between now and 2028, humanity has to make a choice. Are they going to be returning back to Eden, which is the organic original Earth timeline, or middle timeline? But right now, they're all coexisting at the same time. That's why we're seeing the sudden rise of artificial intelligence. But at the same time, we're seeing a great awakening taking place. But eventually, those two timelines are going to go their separate ways at the end of 2028.
That's interesting that you brought up 2028 because obviously we hear a lot of 2030, which is the globalists' agenda to take control, destroy the population, etc. Can I ask why you came to 2028? Which what's the reasoning behind that?
Well, based on some ancient records that I was able to study, like the Enuma Elish, which is the Sumerian tablets, and as well as some transmissions that I was able to get from Commander Valiant Thor, who, by the way, is at the head of the Y-Head operation, right? He did meet with Eisenhower prior to Kennedy to install the plan and create the positive programs. But to answer your question, due to these ancient records that I had access to and to the transmissions confirmed by Valiant Thor, there is an end date to the simulation that we are currently in. And the time frame was no later than between now. I mean, they said between 2025 and 2028, but 2030 is just a number that they threw out there. But from what I understand is that 2028, the end of 2028, is when this actual simulation or this current reality construct definitely collapses. And that's what many know it to be as the dissolution of the three-dimensional reality that we're in. So that's how I was able to arrive at this information. But other
Fantastic.
sources beyond myself have also concluded that there is something that is very significant about the year 2028 and 2030. And, a lot of this information is being confirmed by other people as well that are, um, like you could say, archaeologists, anthropologists, and other people that are also channeling extraterrestrial beings. And they're all getting the same message that 20 between now and 2028, but no later than 2030, this world's not going to be the way it is. It's going to be totally a different world. So what that tells us is that we have to make a choice. We're either going to go into the 5D Earth reality, which is what we call the golden age, returning back to balance, or we have to align with technology and get sensors, get implants, get the implant, the neurochip, what they call, in order to be part of a cybernetic technocratic dystopia.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stay with the how should we call it? The natural side of me. I'm not going to have any chips put into my head. As I said, I've watched The Matrix, and I can tell you now, if they can read your mind, they can put stuff in your mind, and that is not happening to me. I can tell
Oh
you
yeah.
that now.
One of the ways that they could read people's mind is because within the private sector, AI is already advanced to what they call AGI, artificial general intelligence. So the whole purpose of having iPhones and smartphones is to um, be able to keep tabs not only with what you say and what you do, but the AI from behind the scenes is actually more advanced than what we think, to the point where they have the technology where through the iPhones that people use, they're actually able to tap into your thoughts. And that's the reason why the Alliance is going to eliminate the cell phones and replace them with the Q phones, because the Q phones are different. The Q phones are meant to first and foremost not spy on us, and then secondly, they are meant to not radiate us to death. It is believed that all smartphones and iPhones were actually weaponized against us, and there's a lot of ample evidence in favor of that. And that has a lot to do with the radio frequency that comes out of the iPhones, right? So, a lot of the reasons why people are developing a lot of illnesses suddenly, like cancer and tumors, prostate issues, heart issues, is because they're sleeping with their cell phones or they're constantly on their cell phones. And there are videos that show that when you talk on your cell phone, the radiation is literally penetrating your brain. And this explains why a lot of people are actually losing memory. They're having cognitive disorders because the iPhone was literally made to, you could say, it was weaponized against humanity. And so that's the reason why the Alliance came up with the Q phones. So the Q phones are going to be operating on a different, on a more organic frequency as opposed to the negative 5G towers, if that makes any sense. It's going to be operating, based on the natural rhythms of planet Earth, the natural frequency of the planet. So it's not going to be as harmful. It's not even going to be harmful. And it's also going to be much better because it's not going to be spying on you, where you're actually going to have your own thoughts again, and you're going to be able to do things without it being recorded by the CIA and DARPA.
I've got to ask you, Ishmael, and this is from Ron Starr. Have you got any solar flash updates?
you know, from what I heard is that we're actually going to have 3 events, and we are expecting one sometime before summer. And what this solar flash could do is very comparable to a Carrington event. It could take out the grid, but at the same time, it could also um, upgrade certain people that are matching the right frequency. And if that happens, there's going to be the first level of ascenders. And what that means is that there's going to be a great number of people on the earth that are going to all of a sudden wake up with these amazing superhuman abilities. So that's what the solar flash is all about. It is literally changing our DNA at a cellular level. So I believe that the first flash, or the first sign of the flash, could take place before summer, due to the fact that we are in the 25th year solar cycle, approaching solar maximum. But I also believe that there's going to be another flash taking place sometime between now and the end of this year. And then the third one is going to be taking place sometime in 2026, because the Galactic Alliance is planning on establishing first contact, and they are pushing the white hats, by the way, with disclosing the highly classified information regarding the free energy, the anti-gravity aircraft. Um, and so it is believed that there's going to be three types of solar flashes, but they have to happen this way because not everyone is ready to ascend. But they say that after the disclosure, which is going to take place this year, by the end of this year, a greater number of people are going to be ready to ascend. So that's why it's been a event that has been divided into three separate events. That's what I was told.
I was going to say, because something we've all become accustomed to, and Charlie is a big advocate for this, which is patience.
Patience,
I
yeah.
mean, we all want it to happen tomorrow, but Charlie has always said this has to happen the right way. It has to happen the right way, or otherwise it's chaos, destruction, death on an epic scale. And who wants that in the world? Because that is totally against what we are all fighting for. And I
Exactly.
totally understand what you're saying there, Ishmael. Totally
Yeah,
understand.
the frequency has to be matching with the coronal mass, flare that is about to be injected, that is going to be exerted by the sun. Because if it's not, it could cause massive earthquakes and tsunamis, super volcanoes blowing up, and the galactics don't want that. They want this transition to be as smooth as possible. So now they decided to do it in three phases. The first phase is for those that are already ready, but it's not going to be a very powerful one. It's just going to be um, a minor one, but it's going to activate certain DNA in certain people that are already at that level of frequency. And then the second one, which is going to happen after the white hats disclose the information to the world, which is going to create what is known as critical mass. Then more people are going to be ready. And then the third one is going to be in 2026, where the rest of the world will have an opportunity to also shift into the fifth dimensional Earth reality. So they're doing it very strategically. They want to make sure that um, things don't go wrong. You could say.
Yeah. And well, as we all know, along the way, things have gone wrong a little bit. But,
Mm-hmm.
we all make plans. Plans go wrong. You adapt to the new plan. I get that. And I'm just going to backtrack us a little bit. Ishmael, Kathy Goblet has asked, when will the Q phones be available to us, or when do you estimate?
I believe that as soon as they disclose the information that we've all been waiting for, immediately after that, because they already have the med beds in place. Um, they already have the holographic regenerators. And by the way, there are different types of med beds, not just med beds that cure every disease, but also med beds that regenerate limbs and organs. And they also have med beds that are actually that rejuvenate people so that people don't age anymore. And they also have med beds for animals. So they have different types of med beds. But I believe that all of these healing modalities and beautiful advanced technologies are going to be rolled out as soon as they release the information and completely eliminate all the actors that are left from the
Brilliant.
cabal.
Thank you for that, because what we do know is that we are waiting for, I don't know, that moment that everybody cannot deny, when everybody sits there and goes, my God, the whole lot, it was all real. Us lot will sit there and go, told you so, but it's not about that. And Q phones, med beds, everything is what we need moving
Mhm.
forwards into our 5D reality. Can I just ask you, everyone talks about 5D reality. Why don't we go into 4D first? Can I ask the difference?
Absolutely. Well, that's a very good question. And what I've come to understand is that the original Earth, known as Terra, existed in the 4D, 5D, and 6D. And this was during a time that we would call Atlantean times, where you had people that lived for a few thousand years. They were living in the 4D. You had people that lived in the 5D that were like considered immortal. And then you had evolving Earth Terrans that were considered primitive, lived in the 4D. So, from what I understand, is that we are returning back to that time frame where it's going to be operating in the 4D for those younger souls that are not ready to advance to the 5D or 6D. But for those advanced souls, they're going to have direct access to the 5D and the 6D. So we are going to be moving beyond just the 5D. Now, what I mean by that is the younger souls, which is the majority of Earth Terrans, um, they have to evolve in increments. They have to evolve in increments. So there will be a 4D reality. And I believe that that's where people are going to be dependent on the advanced, Star Trek technology that is about to be released. So those three realities are going to be coexisting with one another. Now, the difference is this, is that those advanced souls that are not the young souls that are going to be moving past 4D reality Earth are going to be able to pop back into the 4D reality at will. And for the souls that go into the 6D, which is a smaller group of people that are just super advanced, they're going to be able to have access to all three realities at will. However, the younger souls that are meant to evolve in increments, that are going into the 4D Earth, where we are going to be living as a what I call level 1 type interplanetary civilization, they are going to evolve in increments. So it might take them about 1,000 years for them to actually reach the 5D. But in the meanwhile, during that millennium, all of the ancient temples of light, all of this information that has been kept from humanity for thousands of years, will once again be circulating or will be taught to the younger souls. And that has nothing to do with the curriculum we've known. This has everything to do with the true history of the Earth beyond Atlantis, our true origin as multidimensional beings made in the image of the one God, and the true nature about our reality. So again, everything's going to be different in the 4D. The Earth Terrans are going to have an opportunity to advance eventually when they are ready. So that's what I was told. I was told that the Earth is going into 4D, 5D, and 6D, but depending on the level of the soul, that will determine in which density they end up in.
Wow, thank you very much for your insight there. Because this is, I will say, this is new to me almost. I understand the 3D. I hear a lot of 5D chess, but actually, to actually understand 5D consciousness is a whole concept that I'm sitting here. I mean, Charlie is far, far more ahead than I am. Obviously, he's had many chats with you, Ishmael, and you've had a chance to be able to understand it. But
Well,
him
the
and
difference
everyone.
5D consciousness and 3D consciousness is that 5D consciousness is a consciousness where they don't see things that separate anymore. They see everything as one, and so they live according to the law of one, which is unity consciousness. This is what we call Christ consciousness. So that's the difference between 5D consciousness and 3D consciousness. 3D consciousness, people are still seeing everything as polarized, everything as separated. The ego's still embedded in them, in their mentality. So it's all about me, 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 me. But in the 5D consciousness, that's when people begin to cultivate an all-embracive mentality where they begin to see everything as sacred, the God in all living beings. And that is the difference between 5D consciousness and 3D consciousness. Now, the 4D is when people begin to wake up to the truth. That's when they begin to question everything. And that's where a lot of these awakened people are. They're in that 4D consciousness mentality, where they begin to really get a glimpse of who they really are, as their higher self. And then they start that what is known as the inward journey.
Lovely, thank you. Now, I've got well, actually, quite a few questions to ask yourself. I've got one from Christine Phillips. Ishmael, is Trump a time traveling hybrid? Thank you. Has he come back from the future? Is he already in 5D?
Well, that is a very good question. One of the things that I revealed for the first time about a year ago was this concept called the Triple Temporal Alliance. And what that is that Nikola Tesla, in essence, faked his death. And not only did he fake his death, but him and John Trump, who is the uncle of Donald Trump, were able to develop advanced time travel technology 30 years before the cabal did. And so, in that regard, we could say that the entire Trump family, including Barron Trump, have been time traveling. And yes, to an extent, Trump is a hybrid. He is a human Pleiadian hybrid. And so is Barron Trump, by the way. And he is very aware of the Galactic Alliance. But he is not allowed to say anything until they completely take out all the actors and reveal what's been going on from behind the scenes.
Lovely. Thank you.